Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI and sign up. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, which inspired me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up my books there. All right. So we are continuing with some of the illustration work that I was working on last week, doing some character designs, or rather revising some character designs for the new Greek mythology comic book that I'm working on. Got a little piece here working on my version of Zeus. And I actually think I should take this, what I have so far. Hello. My co-host Khaleesi is meowing underneath my desk. I'm actually thinking I should take this and put it into a new document, because when I exported time lapse from this, I was using an existing file as a template, and it already has like all the stuff that I drew in it, like a whole comic page from this template. And I see James is in the chat already. Awesome. Good to see you, James. Yes, I'm taking this Zeus piece and just refining it into more of a finished illustration. So it's just taking the visual exploration a little bit further here. So let me see. First off, let me just go to my gallery real quick and check out the size of this document. Let's see here. It's 3,300 by 5,100. Do I already have a template set up for that? I should. Going through all my existing files here. Actually, what I can probably do, I have not tried this before, but I think I can take, not that, let me turn that off. There's a frame that I have. I think I can copy this frame and then create a new document from clipboard, and the clipboard should be this exact size. Let's see here. Yep. Makes it easy. Now I can just flip back to the other document, grab the layer that I want. I'm probably going to be flipping back and forth to this document a few times, because aside from this particular sketch that I have, there's a few other little sketches in here that are also kind of useful for me. Excuse me, gotta. All right. Let's see here. All right. Let me just take this sketch. Go to the other document. There we go. All right. Just drop this below the frame here. Something like that. And I was considering the possibility of using this as a cover image. So I want to leave space for a logo up top. Let me switch to my ink brush. Okay. And part of the reason why I have this frame the way I do is because I find that I often need to repurpose illustrations. So while this frame is sort of a template for a comic book cover, it also leaves me enough extra bleed out beyond it that I can, if I want to make a print out of this, or I need to change it to a postcard, it just has extra space so that I can move the elements inside around a bit. So let's see here. So James says, I'm thinking about how an artist's work has a certain look to it. Does that matter if you have a does that matter if you have a cartoony style, but but you have characters who aren't typically happy? Oh, I think that a gritty style is a better fit for a noir story. Well, I think that it is all dependent on your particular tone. Because, for instance, if you look at something like Rick and Morty is a comedy, and the characters are cartoony, but they are very miserable, and it's a very dark story. And another example that pops into mind, because I wrote about it in my newsletter last month, is a comic book called Stray Dogs, written by Tony Fleece and illustrated by Tricia Forrester. And in that book, it's about a bunch of dogs, and it's drawn in sort of a Don Bluth, the animator who did All Dogs Go to Heaven. It's in a style that's sort of an homage to Don Bluth's work, but the story is a very, very dark crime serial killer story, and it's about all these dogs who are the pets of women who have been abducted and murdered. Um, Definitely not fun. Uh, it's a great book. I highly recommend it, but it's very, very dark subject matter. What makes it both disturbing and stylistically what really makes it work is that fact that it is a cartoony style book, but the content is very, very dark, but done in a very cartoony style. So I think it depends on your goals, because if you want to make something unsettling for your audience, then it might behoove you to go ahead and draw in a cartoony style. And there's also the fact that if your natural drawing style is cartoony, then it could be that you don't want to spend your life fighting against your own look. Which means, on one hand, maybe you do decide to, you know, intentionally adapt your style. Like, some artists are really, really good at adapting their style to different looks. Like, I'm thinking of Stuart Immonen or Immonen. He's an artist. I'm sure he's done some DC stuff, but he's mostly known for Marvel stuff. Did a run of a relaunch, the new X-Men with Brian Michael Bendis. He took over on um, Ultimate Spider-Man after Mark Bagley left. One of my favorites, he did a series called Next Wave with Warren Ellis. He's done a lot of amazing art, and each book he does looks a little bit different. So if you have the skill set to change your work depending on the type of story, then I say yes, absolutely modify it to match the story. But for me, I mean, this is a funny conversation I have with my wife all the time. She says I really should look into doing something like, there's a huge audience for children's books and children's literature, and she wants me to do things with cute animals. And I acknowledge that she's right. There's a huge audience there. But even when I try to draw something cute, it comes out dark and disturbing, because that is the nature of how, I don't know, it's just the lines that come out of my my hand. When I try to make stuff that's cute, it's still pretty dark. So if your work has a cartoony tendency to it just by its nature, then maybe there's a way to do kind of like the Rick and Morty example that I mentioned. Or, I think Stray Dogs is another good example that you can lean into the type of work you do and simply let the cartooniness of it be that's your look, regardless of the type of story. Another artist that I think of is Robert Crumb. Robert Crumb has done adaptations of the Bible. He's done very um, offbeat and transgressive comics about sex and culture. Some stuff that's people consider highly offensive, um, but his style is a cartoony style. I mean, he does have a series of illustrations that he's done of old blues musicians, and that is a little bit more sort of like the portraits that you would see in a newspaper or in Barnes like in a New York Times portrait. It's not the woodcut style, but I would say in terms of the types of hatching that Robert Crumb has done in those blues portraits, it's more in the tone of that kind of work. So I don't think that the nature of how you draw has to be a prison or a problem, something that keeps you stuck in working one way or the other. I think that you can very much use your own personal style to work around that. And I am curious, James, actually, are you somebody who is able to draw in different styles, or do you tend to be somebody who your work is your work no matter what you're drawing? For me, I have a bit of a interesting creative journey in that I used to be somebody when I was younger, I could copy and mimic a whole variety of styles. And as I've gotten older and spent more time studying, focusing, trying to, trying to work more on my craft and less on my style, as I started focusing on style less, my style became more I don't know if consistent is the word, but it did seem to be that I had a certain look that was kind of locked in. And let me deselect this. I just want to get the little thumbnail that has his costume because it's not like his costume is that elaborate, but I do want to have this in here in this illustration. So I want to grab this, go back to my other frame, drop this in here as reference. I can put this here in the corner. Now, the other thing for me to ask is, what kind of background do I want? Because I hadn't even really thought about a background for this. I just figured it's going to be him leaping over the sky. But I should just have some Parthenon style arches, like, Mount Olympus kind of in the background. Let's see here. So James says, right. I was reading an adult-oriented sci-fi comic a while ago that had a cartoony style. Click to the next comment. I haven't really messed around with other styles. I mainly stick to my own. So it sounds like your style is well, is sort of, illustrative because, when you mentioned about cartoony stuff and reading something that's cartoony, it made me interpret that your style is not cartoony, it's more illustrative. Um, I also see, oh, pop it up in the chat. I see Katie Cat there says hello or hello. Good to see you. Thanks. Oh, or are you saying hellar like a weird hello, or are you saying hellar like a hell centaur, helltar? Because a hell centaur is actually a really badass idea, and I might use that in my comic. So just by being silly, you may have given me an awesome idea. So thank you. But cool. But let me see. What was I gonna say? James, there's a web comic called Penny Arcade. And the thing of you mentioning a sci-fi comic made me think about that because Penny Arcade, they got to the point where they've been doing their normally the it's centered around gaming and game culture. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but anyway, it tends to be like 3-panel humor strips, but they started doing like short stories within their world, some that were like sci-fi fantasy, some that were um like sort of a horror adventure with kids going to camp and having like a Boy Scout horror trip type thing. But one that really strikes out at me was I think it was called Automata, and it was very much like their version of I Am Robot. And it was a great comic strip. So it's just like a crime noir, kind of like Blade Runner, except your protagonist is a robot trying to solve, I guess, the murder of other robots. It's been a long time since I've read it, so I really can't accurately quote the plot of the strip. But my point here is that the artistic style, is their artistic style generally is very very cartoony, but the strip itself is noir and dark and gritty, and that contrast I think is very very attractive. And Caddy Cat says, "That's awesome how you came up with that just from saying hello." He says, "You're truly talented at finding inspo or inspiration." No, awesome, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, I mean, I think that that's kind of the instinct of being a creative person is just looking at something and saying, "Oh, this could be this could be that," and just jumping on it. I mean, to be honest, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking to myself, I don't want that Helltar idea to go away. I'm going to open a new document. I'm going to move away from the Zeus thing, and I'm going to sketch out that Helltar idea. I might end up using it in the actual comic I'm doing. So let's see here. Let me create a new document. Well, that's interesting. If I create something from the clipboard, it really does not matter I guess maybe it's keeping the dimensions that I had, but I only copied this one tiny little piece of it, but it gave me the full document size. That is interesting. Did not know it would do that. Katie says, "I'm loving Zeus's body type here." Well, I mean, the thing is, first off, thank you. Secondly, when you're doing something like Greek mythology, there have been so many different types of interpretations. And I wanted specifically to try and just find something that felt, well, I mean, there's going to be, Apollo is going to be much more like a Superman type build. Mercury is going to be really skinny. Each of the different gods, Hephaestus is going to be kind of hunched over. So for Zeus, making him just as barrel chested as possible. I mean, Ares is going to be kind of like a little bit, more athletic, not as barrel chested as Zeus, but even buffer than Apollo. In fact, you could say it's a comparison between if Apollo is Superman, then Ares is Batman. And right there, I've got another idea. I can literally do well. I mean, that's kind of stealing. It's not really stealing because none of them are my characters. But I was gonna say, doing Superman as Apollo and Batman as Ares. That's already been done in not Stormwatch. What's the spinoff of Stormwatch? The Authority with Apollo and Midnighter, because Apollo is literally called Apollo, and Midnighter is a clear, you know, inspired by Batman type character. So me doing like fan art of Superman as a Greek god and Batman as a Greek god, it's kind of like been done, but it's still a fun idea. So I may file that away in my head later. And Katie Cat says, why are these comments not showing up? Right. Katie Cat says, I feel so bougie having you come up with a sketch idea for me. You know what? No, this is one of the reasons why I enjoy live streaming is because of sort of just you never know what's going to happen when you interact with somebody. Somebody can just randomly give you some. It'll happen to you. Someone will give you a comment or an idea or say something. And you're like, huh, I could do this with it. And I probably would never have had that idea just sitting here by myself drawing. That is kind of the beauty of this. So let's see here. Katie Cat also says, good point. I haven't been a huge fan of Greek mythology interpretations due to the sheer oversaturation, which, yes, there's a lot out there. So I'm trying to find a way to really make it feel like my own. And Katie Cat says, I'm glad to see you trying to deviate. It's 2:22 for me. I think that's in the morning. Woof. Well, you're putting in a late night, which a lot of artists do. I'm at the point where I find it hard to get up. I find it. I try to make myself go to bed earlier these days than I used to because otherwise I will stay up all night. All right, Heltar. So really, it's just like Satan mixed with a centaur, is what I'm imagining. So let's see here. Drop my opacity a little bit and get a rough sketch in here. I'm drawing with these new pen tips, which are nice, but so they're tiny. I mean, they feel sort of weird. It's given me a new feeling when I draw, and I haven't quite gotten used to them yet. So I'm starting by just trying to get a sense of the shift from the horse body to the humanoid torso. And I like to start things off with sort of rubbery blocks. That's kind of my block-in method. Like it's kind of a mix between generally I like to start with stick figures and then build volumes around the stick figures. But when it's something where I really need to understand the mass more than I need the stick figure, or honestly, when it's a stick figure that is anything other than humanoid, the the blocking in with with primitive shapes like this seems to work well for me. I mean, right now it looks like kind of like the human centipede. Let's see here. Oh, Katie Cat says, nope, 2:22 p.m. Okay, so you're a little bit further on the East Coast. Katie Cat says, in a few hours, I'm going to sleep anyway. Well, I'm up. Might as well enjoy the stream. Well, I'm glad you're joining us. And you know what? If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I generally stream Sundays at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So Sundays at 2 your time. Still getting used to a mic with a cough button. This is one of those interesting stages because I can really shape the character a lot just by doing little things like making this cube that is the upper torso much wider across the chest, across the pec muscles, and then have it cut in. And I try to think of it in a sculptural manner, like I'm just drawing in clay and just adding blocks where I need something to be bigger, or just add another mass. And it's funny because I've never really worked with ZBrush and done any sculptural drawing. And who knows, I might actually have an affinity for it. Let's see here. Oh, and Katie Cat says, 8,057 subscribers. Good job. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I've been on YouTube probably since I started my last graphic novel series. So over a decade now. So I appreciate that. But it's really just been the fact that I just get a few subscribers every week and I just haven't gone away for a decade. So over time, you're going to build up an audience. Some people do go explosive. They put something out there that tons of people love and it goes viral. I'm in it for the long haul. It's more like I just keep putting out work and sharing it and keep showing up. But I appreciate that. Let's see here. You also asked what program and brush settings do you use? So the program I'm drawing in is Procreate. And the brush settings, well, I've got a variety of brushes in here. So really, at a certain point, I just started going through and I would take the default brushes that it came with, and I would just try and find things that satisfied my needs. So I would go in, a lot of the brushes I use are either custom brushes or I take some of the basic brushes that came in and I would just modify them so that they would taper the way that I want. Let me get that out of the way. Things that would taper the way I want, and then once I have one that I like, I'll go in, like I have one that gives me a nice solid ink line. And I have experimented with making, let me see if I put this at full opacity. I have experimented with taking this brush that, like, this is what I like to use to ink my comics. And when I'm inking digitally, that is. And I have created one that changes both size and opacity with pressure, but I've found that I can't get as much of a nice drop off as I'd like. Like, it really doesn't feel like a marker the way I was hoping it would. So instead, what I tend to do is just stick with that one brush and just change the opacity as I need it. So I've got like a couple of opacity bookmarks on the side for when I'm sketching in very lightly at the beginning, as I get more detailed. The one brush kit, there's a couple of brush kits that I have purchased. Well, first off, I took a schoolism class on Procreate, taught by Nico Lockerstern, and he doesn't give you a brush pack, but part of his class is on how to make custom brushes. So as I was going through his tutorials, I was saving all of the brushes that I made. I just create a folder and I just call it my schoolism brushes, even though they're not from schoolism. But they're just all of the brushes where I got a better sense of how to create custom brushes. And then I have a couple other packs that I have found online for free brush packs, but there's one that I paid for that I genuinely was like, this is an incredibly valuable brush pack. There's an artist named Lane Brown, and you can buy this brush pack. I think he sells it on Proco's website, proco.com. And he has a course on digital illustration and digital painting that looks very much like traditional media. It's got like a pastel brush pack, a pencil brush pack, a paint pack. And I take charcoal figure drawing class. Like, you don't have to use charcoal pencil, but I've been taking figure drawing classes for years using charcoal pencils. And this was the first brush pack that I ever found that really did feel like an actual charcoal pencil and worked. Or if I do it the brush the large size, it'll give like a nice broad line, but you can build up tones softly and lightly. So, well, no, I don't want to undo the whole thing. I was about to erase everything I sketched in there. Let me just undo those couple of strokes. That was a long answer. You just want to know what brushes I'm using. So really, it's a bunch of custom brushes that I've made, some brushes that I learned how to make from Schoolism, and the Lane Brown charcoal master pack. Those are kind of my go-tos. Let's see here. And I'm glad you appreciate the detailed explanations. I mean, honestly, it's because I won't shut up and I drive my wife nuts talking about art and art tools. So I just get in here and I will go on and on forever. People ask me questions and I will just keep on running my mouth. James mentions, I bought ZBrush a few years ago during a winter sale, so I saved some money. I think I bought it from CG River. That's interesting. I did not know you can buy ZBrush from third parties. That is something that I might be interested in. I mean, I've dabbled with Blender, and I actually did find that I enjoyed using Blender. I just never got very far in it. For me, the whole thing is I enjoy just sketching so much more that it's hard to feel really motivated to dive into 3D modeling. I mean, I'm not anti CG. I just find that doing the type of work that I do, where I'm just sketching stuff out and then maybe fleshing it out in Illustrator or other tools, if I'm doing something that's usually it's more if I'm doing like toy design. That's where I'll bring other software into it. Let's see here. Let's see here. So Katie Cat says, this is so weird. I keep doing okay. I don't know what's up with the interface here. Sometimes I'll click on it and it takes a while before it actually shows the comment. Katie Cat says, I've been on YouTube since the site's very beginnings. Before there was iPad babies, there were desktop babies. I was a desktop baby. And he says, glad to hear you're in this for the long haul. The personality trait that guarantees success on this site is resilience. Very true. I certainly hope so. I've seen a lot of cool people doing stuff for years and years. Then I've seen people who will be on for a couple of years, get popular, and then disappear. I'm like, what happened? I was enjoying your content. But people got to live their lives. So they also say, I love making my own brushes when I do digital. Let's hear. And I see Red is in the chat. Hey, Red. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you again. Let's see here. And and Katie Cat says, so true about not shutting up. I love being talkative. Well, it's actually a very, very odd thing because when it comes to most other topics beyond making art, I tend not to be that talkative. I tend to be more quiet and keep to myself. And I think that there's something before hang on, I just have to take this tip off because I'm just not used to, you know what? I will leave it on, even though it feels weird because this is how I'm going to learn to use it. But the control just feels so strange to me. Oh, no wonder it was acting weird. I was using a brush that has the smoothing turned up for if I have to do long, smooth lines. So what was I saying? Oh, talkativeness. On my own, when it comes to just normal everyday topics, I actually usually kind of prefer to lay back and let other people talk and just sort of listen and learn. And I'm not necessarily that interested in talking too much or talking about myself. And art is the one exception to that. When it comes to making art, that's when I really get talkative. And when I'm talking to other artists, I think it's because the headspace of an artist is such a odd place and it's such a unique place that when you are talking to other people, it's like that whole idea of having a sort of a secret language that only you and a certain number of other people understand, even though that certain other number of people is, millions upon millions of artists. Because, something like I went to Lightbox Expo for the first time uh, last year, and it is a fantastic show. I'm erasing some of this because I really need to fix the horse body on there. Drop the opacity here. Um, and just the idea of being in this huge event, these multiple buildings full of like creative people that are illustrators, animators, storyboard artists, color artists, writers, like that vibe, that energy of being surrounded by people that are all kind of unified in this same passion. What's magical about it is that generally speaking, most of the artists I know feel isolated. They tend to be the only creative person in their family. Um, Even though I definitely met like people who were brothers or siblings, brothers and sisters, siblings that worked together to create cool animation or artwork or what have you. But artists tend to feel isolated in our craft, um, and feel like we have no one to talk to about what go see, that's the thing. For me, I try really to this channel is more about me just sharing what's going through my head while I'm making art, because we all see the time lapses of artists making amazing, brilliant pieces. And we see people that are just posting the tutorials of the masterworks, but we don't see that much of the grind. And, I use grind in quotes because I personally really, really enjoy the artistic process. Even when it's going poorly, I enjoy the trying to sit down and figure stuff out and the drawing and redrawing and realizing I need to grab reference. Like, for instance, ordinarily, if I were drawing something like this, the first thing I would do is I would realize, oh, wait, I need to grab some images of horses, not to photorealistically render a horse, but because if I'm going to make up it's not making up a creature. We all know, centaurs exist, but if I'm going to draw a centaur, at least half of it, not at least, exactly half of it is a horse, meaning I should probably get an image of a horse I should be looking at an image of a horse while I'm roughing this character out just to anatomically pull details, make sure that like starting with a horse rearing up like I'm doing would be a really smart way to start drawing a centaur. That's really what I should be doing. I mean, again, I didn't know I was going to be doing this live stream. I just decided to go with it. But starting with reference, just so you have an idea of what the thing is that you're going to be making up, is a pretty good rule of thumb, as opposed to just sort of winging it. But my greater point is just that this process can feel very isolating and lonely, even though it is something that, for me, I'm compelled to do it. um, and the sometimes loneliness of the artistic process is meditative for me, and I'm okay being by myself for hours upon hours at a time. But a lot of times when I'm doing this, I will have other YouTube channels on, and I'll be listening to other artists talking about their process, or I'll be listening to a podcast. They're talking about creativity and creative problems, or maybe talking about writing because I'm also, I'm doing comics. Um, Writing is another thing that I am constantly thinking about. Like, see, even this right here, I'm looking at this and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm trying to make this horse anatomy too much like human anatomy. That is absolutely not what this should be. This should be going up like this and that. And if I had a picture of a horse in front of me while I was doing this, it would make me make fewer anatomical mistakes. And the only reason why I'm not just saying, well, I know you're like, well, you keep saying you need some reference, go get some reference. It's purely the fact that once I'm live streaming, if I'm just going online and looking up photos for reference, maybe I'll do a live stream. Maybe next week's live stream will be about picking reference, and I'll come up with something that I want to do, and we can do a YouTube search, or not a YouTube search, just do a search online and show you how I tend to pick out reference. But it's mostly the fact that looking up reference is not a particularly exciting thing. That's sort of like the homework that you have to do before you do the illustration. And I figure I would rather show you guys something interesting, you know, a weird rough sketch of a demon centaur as opposed to, you know what, hang on. Because if I just have this arm going up, it's almost a little bit like he's doing the same thing as the horse legs. I kind of want to have his torso doing something counter to that. Because if with this side going up, I kind of want this side of his torso, the human torso, to be going up just as a counterbalance. All right, let me come back to the comments a little bit because I have been ranting and ranting and ranting. So yeah, that whole thing about me not shutting up. Let's see here. Sorry about the long rant there. Red says, "Bro, bro, I'm losing every ounce of my brain cells to make this short 3 pages for my comic." Well, I'll get caught up in the comments, but if you haven't already said further below, I'd be curious to hear what are the specific challenges that you're facing, because everything creatively is a problem to be solved. And for me, the problem solving, it's kind of like some people like crossword puzzles, some people like Sudoku, some people like Angry Birds. For me, making art and making comics specifically is the puzzle that I enjoy solving. So it's a matter, honestly, for most things, it's a matter of taking whatever that problem is you're looking at, and just chopping it up into small pieces that you can sit down and and make them more manageable, and then look for solutions to each of those small problems and build on them until you get the whole thing solved. It's not easy, but it is doable. So Katie Cat says, I'm more of an extrovert. When I talk about my special interests, also, I can lead a convo fairly well, but people around me tend to put me down, leading me to shut down. See, that is unfortunate. I mean, and that is also part of the reason why, like I said, I can be a lot more talkative when I'm talking with other artists about the process, because I can see how this stuff, all of the things that we're talking about, are only interested to people who are interested in making things. I mean, and that's not 100% true because there are lots of people who are fans of art and illustration who aren't necessarily trying to make art, but they appreciate, people who read sci-fi novels, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to make a sci-fi novel. People who love fantasy illustration and don't necessarily want to draw or make illustration or publish books. There's lots of people out there who are fans, purely fans, who will still enjoy the process talk. But generally speaking, all of these things that we show up for, and like to listen to from other creators, it's because we all have that bug in our ear that tells us to make, to to draw, to create, to express ourselves in some, whatever our particular personal unique way is. Let's see here. Trying to decide what to do with the hands. Maybe. See, I left you guys for a minute and started going into the problem solving. I'm going to give him like a fiery Ghost Rider type shoulder mane of flames. You know what? Let's take this hand, make it a fist. And give him a pitchfork. Maybe move this pitchfork going towards the viewer. Something like that. And I feel like even though the angle that I have this arm going at is a good angle, I feel like it's going to get really weird if this composition just keeps going up, 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 up. And I need to do something to maybe try an arm that maybe is coming just towards the viewer, out, and then down. Or I can have it coming completely down and have his palm open. Like I was thinking about having his palm open and a fireball coming out of his hand. That's another possibility. Let me hop back to the comments because I know I asked Red about the question about the problems that you're having with the 3-pager you're working on. But first, let's see here. So Katie Cat was talking about the whole thing of people putting down their interest and shutting down. Which I mean, again, that's a tough thing. It's hard to try and entertain people who are not necessarily interested in this deep process stuff. Katie Cat says, not sure how I'd suffice in an environment with different people that let me flourish. And then said to Red, sorry, it's hard not to trauma dump when talking about myself at all. The isolation is real. Yeah, see, that's the bizarre thing. I don't know how often you guys are actually able to get together with other creative people. For me, I used to, well, I'm not taking a figure drawing class this semester, but I've been taking classes with a figure drawing instructor named Carl Ganas, and he teaches at this place. He used to teach at this place in LA called the Animation Guild, but he teaches at all the major studios: Disney, DreamWorks, Sony, and that that class, just being able to be in a room full of people, some professional animators and illustrators, some just some art students, some hobbyists, all wide variety of skills and craft, but all these people just united in wanting to learn to improve their drawing craft. Um, that has been sort of like my safe space for many years in terms of just being able to sit and gather with people. And during the pandemic, Carl moved to doing classes on Zoom. And while it's definitely not the same as being in person, it still allows me to be with a wide variety of people. And over time, as more people have come in and gotten used to it, that level of camaraderie that we would get from hanging out, it's a virtual community, but it's still a community. And my greater point is I don't know how you guys feel about it or whether you're actually able to find other artists to spend time with. But virtual communities are absolutely, I think, that's something that I think are available to all of us. In-person communities, there's a group of artists that I've known for years that I've exhibited with at comic conventions, and we uh, we used to have an in-person get together, and that's another thing that the pandemic screwed up. But we still try to get together online every once in a while. In fact, we're overdue for another one of our hangouts. And this is another thing that actually keeps me live streaming is that, believe it or not, you guys have become an ad hoc artistic group for me. So, that's why I always encourage you guys not just talking to me, but to talk to each other and interact with each other and building that nature of community and having people to hang out with and just talk about the crazy random stuff that only people who make pictures really think about or talk about. Or it's not that other people can't understand us, but it's that secret language and that obsession with the process and tweaking tools and looking at like the flow of a composition. Whoops, stylus is trying to get away from me. Looking at the flow of a composition, all of these things. So let's see here. So Red asks Katie, "Are you a comic artist too?" And Katie says, "Sorta. I do the occasional strip in my sketchbook or journal when words cannot express what I'm trying to feel and say." Let's see here. Overall, probably not. Oh wow. Red says, "It's okay, Katie. I live in Burma, so I can relate," which is in East Asia. We're talking a little geography here. And Katie says, "This sketch made my day." You are very welcome. Well, thank you so much. For sharing the idea. I haven't even gotten very far in this sketch, which this is one of the reasons why I stopped doing commissions at conventions because I take so long to, draw and redraw and work out details. I'm gonna try to do a rapid ink job on this. I was watching an illustration. I was watching an Instagram live stories from the illustrator Scott Morse the other day. He happened to go live, like he goes live frequently to work on stuff. And Scott Morse, by the way, um, he's been a storyboard artist at Pixar and in a bunch of other animation studios. I was following his work back when he first started was doing comics in like the late 90s. Um, but he's still doing comic work now, and I just happened to catch him on Instagram when he was live one day, and I saw how quickly he was inking this piece and just made me think, why do I'm so slow? um and I was just incredibly amazed at how effortlessly and quickly he just laid in the ink marks. So I'm gonna try and do that with this piece, and I'm just going to put a black line layer on top of this and see if I can bring out some magic here. Hang on, let me have a little bit of fire going down the spine there. See, it's interesting because it has that cloven hooved demon type feel, but yet he's a centaur. It's kind of a weird, trippy character. All right, let's see here. Katie Cat says, "Awesome. I'm from where they filmed the Office. Absolutely hate living here. I hope to get to be a nomad in the future." Well, dang, Katie, there ain't no party like a Scranton party. Let's see here. Oh, I guess this is in reference to the looking for reference live stream. I'm gonna write that down on a post-it now. That's gonna be next week's live stream, looking for reference. So I'm gonna come up with some topics. In fact, if anybody has any suggestions on what, that's an idea. If anyone throws out some stuff that you'd like to see me look up reference in order to draw, throw it in the comments now before we wrap up. And if so, I will specifically tailor it to that. Otherwise, I'll just come up with some things that I need. Maybe it'd be the reference that I would use for this in terms of getting horses and bodybuilders in an environment, or just some illustration. We'll figure it out. Either it'll be by request, or it'll be just me picking from an illustration that I want to work on. Let me write this down. How to search for a reference. Let's see here. I don't know why. I don't know if my stream is choppy on your guys' end, but on my end, every time I try to hide or show a comment, it's just, I'm getting the spinning beach ball. Let's see here. I think it's because I'm just too far behind in the comments. So I'm going to jump down to the bottom comments there. Let's see here. I'm going to scroll back up through the comments, but right here at the most recent one. Let's see here. Again, it's just taking its time before showing. So weird. There we go. Katie Cat says, "I'm into this stationary binder system called Traveler's Notebook. It's basically my second brain, so no more flying Post-it notes everywhere. They all have a home in my journal." I should get down with something like that. I think that that's an especially good idea. I do have a notebook that I use just for keeping track of what I'm doing, but Post-it notes seem to be useful for just take this, stick it next to whatever the thing is that it's referring to, and come back to it. Let's see here. And let's see here. James also says, "Yeah, it seems a bit choppy." I'm sorry about that. I noticed last night that my wife and I were watching a movie, and the buffering, I guess, for the movie that we were streaming, just every once in a while you'd see that little flash saying that there was connection problems, but then the movie would keep playing. But there's been something with our internet that's been weird lately. And Katie Cat's given a strong recommendation. I find having a journal, Traveler's Notebook binder is a must if you're an ADHDer. I think all of us artists have some level of a spectrum attention issue because of the amount of time it takes for either narrow focus to just do art or that jumping from topic to topic to topic. I mean, hell, just the fact that I sat down starting to do like a Zeus illustration, and I jumped over to this hell this hell centaur, this hell tar. Let's see here. Oh, and Red, I guess, got cut out for a minute. And says, never mind, my power got down again. I am sorry to hear that. Let's see here. And Katie Cat says, my TN has been my special interest main project for the past almost 2 years. It keeps me going. This is fun. I am not sure what the TN stands for. I'm not great with abbreviations and keeping track of that, but I'm in favor of anything that is entertaining and fun and keeping you focused. All right, I'm scrolling back up to the previous comments. Yeah, so Red had said if I don't come back, good night, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Oh, your battery was almost gone. Yeah, all right. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, the power plus, me rambling, but yes, I'm glad you were able to come back. Let's see here. All right, I'm scrolling back up. Okay. So Red had said the 3-page comics have limits for action scenes. Now, see, okay, that right there is a really good point. That was something that action scenes, 3 pages is not a lot of time, a lot of space for an action scene. Like if you're trying to tell a story and throw an action scene into the 3 pages, for me, I almost feel like 3 pages is barely enough room for a good action scene. So if you're trying to do a short story, I would almost think of it as the action scene itself is the story in terms of like the actual physical events that you're watching take place, and then through either inner monologue, narration, dialogue between the characters in that's where you have the emotional story. Why are these people fighting, chasing each other, running, whatever the action is, river rafting, mountain climbing, fighting in a space fighter jet, whatever is the reason why these characters are interacting and the thing that will make you care about them. It's almost like I would use the action sequence itself as the framework and then just say, all right, you're going to have 2 people having a conflict. And whatever that conflict is, you establish the emotional stakes of why these people are conflicting in the first page. You establish, in the second page, you build it up so that it looks like one person's going to win. And then the third, you have the other person win. Or in the third page, you have that resolve. You have some sort of emotional resolve. Maybe that emotional resolve is one of those stories where you're like, does anybody really win in this type of story? Like I've mentioned on my stream before, the Lady and the Tiger, that story where a guy falls in love with a normal commoner falls in love with a princess. The king is like, I'm not having it. You can't marry my daughter. So he puts him in this arena that's like kind of their kingly punishment, where there's 2 doors. And behind one door is a lady, behind the other door is a tiger. He picks the door with the lady, he gets to marry the lady. He picks the wrong door, the tiger, he gets eaten. And at the end of the story ends with the princess gesturing towards one of the doors. And the whole thing is, well, is she gesturing because she loves him so much she doesn't want him to die, so she's telling him which one the lady is behind? Or does she love him in that way that she's like, if I can't have you, no one can have you. So she gestures for him to go to the tiger. And that's just the end of the story. So a story ending does not necessarily have to be a final, like happily ever after. You can end a story with a question. I think a lot of great Twilight Zone episodes and stories end episodes with a question. Um, but yes, 3 pages is not a lot of space to tell a story with a beginning, middle, and end. But I think that if you get creative with what it constitutes a beginning, a middle, and an end, you can use all of that 3 pages real estate towards the action. And then, like I said, through the course of the dialogue that the characters are having in that story, you can build an interesting narrative. Let's see here. Oh, and Katie Cat says, "I'm liking the his hair. Thank you." Um, I think the flames running down over the shoulders is a nice, nice look, a nice touch. Let's see here. They said maybe he's toppling over someone. That is a very good idea. It's the other thing. A lot of times when I'm just doing one character, I have this person, this creature, but I don't really I didn't draw them interacting with a specific person. So really, I've only done half this story with this illustration. The other half is who are they interacting with and why. You know, and as I'm sketching this, I'm thinking about the fact that there's 2 different ways. Like I told you, I was looking at that Scott Morse video, and he went through and did this really beautiful spontaneous inking of the piece. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that maybe what would really help this piece sing is if I went in and put in a lot of silhouette. I think given the amount of time that I have here, if I were at this point and I had another 30 minutes, then it probably would be something where I could go full bore with this. But I want to see what happens if I can just get in here and ink this like I was doing a convention sketch and someone's sitting at my table waiting for me. But what I'm kind of rambling about is just the fact that given that this is a guy on fire, I almost feel like what might work better is to have a little bit. Well, first off, he's also got to have a flaming beard. I just realized that if I'm going to take the time to give him flaming hair and he's a centaur, zoom in a little bit. And I probably should make this brush a little bit smaller. But realistically, you know what? Life is short. Let's just have some fun with this. Realistically, as I'm looking at this, I want to actually take this. So I create a third layer. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to go in here and purely block in everything that I feel would be facing away from the light. Because I feel like with the flames, there should be some very, very heavy shadows. Like even his pecs should create kind of an overhang. And I still haven't finished getting caught up with all the comments. Let me jump back over here. So Katie Cat says, overall, I've had awful experiences with both online and in real life. So my community is validating and affirming YouTube vids. Um, well, you've come to the right place because I try to be as positive as I can about stuff. Um, it says supporting and giving me advice without knowing who I am, thus repeating the targeting cycle. Well, I that is rough. I do wanna tell you not to lose hope that you will eventually find a virtual crowd or a in-person crowd of supportive artists because they're out there. There are groups out there of artists who interact with each other and don't mock or belittle people, that don't judge people regardless of their skill set or whatever particular genre of art or whatever particular interest they have. They're still opening and welcome and encouraging. One community that I can think of off the top of my head is schoolism. Bobby Chu, the founder of schoolism, he has a Discord server that is free. Um, and there is a section on there for people who are taking schoolism courses that are kind of like a study group for students. But aside from that, whether you're an animator, an illustrator, a comic artist, it is a place where people are constantly sharing work, encouraging people. They encourage the ongoing student mindset. So it's a place where there are people who I know are working illustrative professionals who have taken schoolism classes. There's people that are students in college, students in high school, people who are not enrolled in any school at all and are just taking the courses because they're like, I want to do this and I don't have the money to go pay thousands and thousands of dollars and go into debt at art school, which you should not because you don't have to. That's one of the first things I would say is go over, if you just do a search for schoolism Discord, you'll find the page where you sign up for it and they'll just have an invite like you would get an invite to any other Discord server. Go on there, introduce yourself, look around. It's a very, very positive, uplifting, sharing community. But I don't want you to give up just because you've had these negative experiences, because there are people out there who will encourage you and won't mock you. And I think all of us deserve that, because what I was saying when we're starting out, that this process of making art, when you don't have anyone else to talk to about making art, it's like it can feel incredibly lonely, but you're so called to it that you're like, I don't care if I'm alone. I'm going to do this because I love this. Um, but one of the most amazing things in the world is to discover that you aren't alone, and you aren't. So that's one thing I can mention right there that I hope is helpful, and I hope that you will actually go on there and try interacting with that community, and that you'll have an experience similar to what I've seen in terms of just how welcoming people are. Let's see here. Um, Katie Cat also says, I've only just recently been crawling outside of my hermit shell on these live streams with smaller creators. Well, that's where it starts, just meeting people. I mean, there's people who I meet and I'll just leave them a comment on their video telling them I like what they did. You know, Sometimes you'll meet people and I have people that I've met on my stream and I've become genuine friends with, just talking to them over time. So it happens. Let's see here. He said, "I thought the fire bloom behind the guy was hair." No, you actually are right. That was my intention. Is that I drew it as hair, even though it is like, instead of giving him like centaurs tend to be pretty hairy. So I thought instead of giving him a mane, I decided to give him well, it's a mane made out of fire. So you are right in your perception that was intentional. Let's see here. This is interesting because I've got like now the lighting gets a little bit weird because I've got the lighting coming from his head, but then I also have the lighting coming down the side of his torso because of the fireball that he's holding. There's so much fire up in here. Yeah, this is definitely going long here. Let's see here. Katie Cat says, sadly, I haven't been able to have a community. Nonetheless, I press on. Um, LOL. I used to be so slow. I'm starting to speed painting. I'm starting to speed up painting now. Thankfully, I think also doing a daily gouache plein air helped a ton. Man, I've been dying to get outside. I recently moved to a more woodsy area, and I want to get my art supplies out with me and go do some nature sketching. I think you are absolutely right. Working plein air. Um, Actually, before diving in, I'm more of an acrylic painter, and I feel like if I were going to go do some plein air, I'd probably go watercolor. But that said, working with painted material, I probably would start with just plein air drawings first, and then slowly move into color because working in black and white tends to be my safe space. But I think exactly what you're talking about in terms of working plein air being incredibly helpful for developing speed, improving speed. All right. I think I'm going to go back to that line art layer and just add my thinking in this was come in and just ink a bunch of black shadows because he's got light pouring up, pouring out of the upper part of his body. That I can really come in here and just define him mostly with shadows. And then when I'm done, just come in, go back to that line area, and really it just comes now down to a little bit of detail and suggestion of light. A little bit of outline, a little bit of detail. So let me go back to this line layer, reduce my brush size. And that's another thing. I don't force myself to work quickly often enough. It's been a lot of noodling and taking my time and building up a figure and doing tons of studies, tons of thumbnails, which I enjoy that process. I really enjoy the process, but I think I need to get back into the idea of just knocking out a finished piece. Come in here. Let's see here. All right. Oh, the Tien, the Traveler's Notebook. Let's see. Yeah, Katie Cat mentioned the Tien is the Traveler's Notebook. And they also mentioned, I think neurodivergent people gravitate towards communities like this due to isolation, niche interests, etc. And they go on to say, Chroma MoMA did a vid on using Delator film and making an action scene in one page. So that might be good for some inspo. Yes, some good inspiration right there. In fact, I'm gonna make a note and I'm gonna go watch that video. I don't actually have any of that that Delator Zipatone, but I love watching artists use it, giving stuff that classic manga look. Let's see here. Yeah, I created somewhere in my tablet. I've got a bunch of sheets. I made a bunch of Zipatone like manga screen patterns I could just drop into a file. But it's not like I really need it because there's a brush that creates those patterns as well. Here. Flame beard. Let's see here. Katie Cat says, luckily for me, I found the vintage story community. They're much more supportive of me, but still kind of passive aggressive to me. I said, overall, the hostility from others has taught me to be self sufficient. And you know what? I think that being self sufficient is very good. I feel like letting other people define who we are it's one thing to listen to feedback and get inspiration from others to help people see places where we can grow, but in the end we're the ones who have to live our lives, and letting too much of negative influence in is it's not healthy for anybody. So I am glad that you're a self-sufficient person. And Katie says, I don't have Discord anymore. I had to delete my account to get away from an abusive friend. Not to mention, I am not mentally well enough to handle that. I hate the 24/7 FOMO notifications. I'm not the greatest with boundaries, especially online. So I think I'll wait it out. Well, you know what? The fact that you understand yourself well enough that you know your boundaries and you're aware of what things can or cannot be triggers um, is a very good thing. So always do what you feel is best for your own mental health and happiness. If there's ever a point where you do feel comfortable coming back to Discord, I will definitely recommend that schoolism channel. But you should definitely always take care of your own health first. This guy is not particularly happy. I'm gonna just do normal hair on here. Although I was thinking, as long as I'm doing like the flame beard, I almost was thinking that the chest hair should be flames as well. But that's gonna just get too crazy. And see, the thing that I wonder about is I don't know whether this would be a better illustration if I didn't fill this in with all these blacks and instead just used color instead. That's something that I've been thinking about is switching from, it feels to me just by putting in all of these dark shadows that I have made it feel, well, first off, I can tell you, oh, I did switch back. I was afraid that I didn't switch back to the line art layer. But the nice thing is that having those spotted blacks on a separate layer, I can go in and redo this illustration where I'm doing it all with color as opposed to doing it with these shadows. And actually just putting this in here makes me realize that I actually need to go back into this layer, and at this part where the fingers would be facing the light, I need to get rid of those shadows there. And that's one of the downsides. Digital has so many positives, but you also constantly, when you're working traditional, there's no such thing as a wrong layer to draw on. But I think we've all been on that thing where you've been drawing on one layer for like an hour, and then you go back and you're like, "Oh crap. I should have been drawing this on this other layer, and I can't. Erasing it now would be a real pain in the ass, and I really don't want to just redo everything I did." And then you're just sort of forced to make do. Let's see here. If I let myself just work quickly, it's not that bad. Generally speaking, my main reason for not working quickly is because the faster I work, the less pleased I am with the results. And I am very positive about our own creative process, and things are never as bad as we feel like they are. But honestly, I do tend to be very self-critical of my own art, perhaps overly so. Let's see here. Let's see here. Katie Cat says, normally my hair mistake would be pointed out to me in a condescending, passive aggressive way, make me feel like a failure and putting me down. You know what? That's the problem is that's just people being jerks. I think that I'm lucky that I don't really encounter, knock on wood, I tend not to draw those kinds of people around me. But usually when I have people that are being negative, I tend to either just block them and ignore them, or I tend to say, "I see your point," and then just leave it at that. Because I mean, if someone like, I had somebody comment on one of my videos before about how it was very far mark. Like, it was a video where I was doing a study from another artist, and they were talking about how far off the mark I was from what the artist was doing. And I said, "Well, yeah, that's right. That's why I'm studying and trying to get better." Um, and I told them that I appreciated their comment and left it at that. But, if they were to come back to me with even more negative comments, I probably would just block them and not engage. But that is not easy to do because our instinct is one, we want everyone to like everything that we do. And two, we, I think artists tend to want to be pleasers to a certain degree. So we want to win people over with our work. And we also tend to be hurt when people don't like our work because we feel like if you're saying you don't like my work, you're saying you don't like me. Um, and it took me a long time to realize that one, if someone doesn't like my work, that doesn't mean that they don't like me or that I'm a bad person. And two, It's okay if people don't like me. I want to be likable. I want to be liked by people. But there's gonna be people in this world who no matter what I say, no matter what I do, they have just decided that I'm an asshat or I'm just full of BS or just my art sucks, therefore I suck. There's gonna be people in the world like that. And I'm never gonna be able to make those people happy anyway. And so why try? Why bother? It is what it is. And I also am aware that that is so much easier said than done. So don't think that I'm trying to give you this prescriptive, like, oh, all you need to do is just not care what other people think and just blow it off. I know that that is saying it is one thing, doing it, living it, feeling it is completely another. Um, but I think a lot of these things are just from time. And believe it or not, I think part of this is also doing conventions, comic conventions, where I had to talk to people in person because it's scarier to be rejected in real life, but also that jerk attitude that people have sometimes, I ran into it less. In real life, people do tend to be nicer about an artist even if they don't like them. So, yeah, let me turn off this underdrawing layer, see how this is coming along. It's very Frank Millerish, which I love Frank Miller's work, so I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Let's see here. A little bit of these flames coming down the tail. And that's another thing that I am not good at is just leaving mistakes. I tend to sit there and say, "Oh, well, this is wrong. Let me go fix it." Instead of just making a mark and treating it almost like as if I were inking traditionally, like there's no undo, just to draw. And if something's wrong, I'm like, all right, well, let me just draw around it. In digital, it's so easy to keep drawing and erasing, and going into this endless cycle. This guy really looks unpleasant. So cranky. Let's see here. Katie Cat Katie Cat says, "Luckily, you're super nice to me." Well, thank you. I try to be super nice to everyone because I think we'd live in a better world if everyone was super nice to each other. Um, but I'm glad to have you here. They say, I used to do watercolor. Wasn't a huge fan of the transparency of the medium. I wanted something more opaque like acrylics without the permanence of it. Gouache happened to be everything I wanted. Now, see, that's the funny thing because I actually, acrylics, when I do paint traditionally, that tends to be my go to medium. And yes, people don't necessarily like the permanence of it. But one of the reasons why I went to acrylics is because when I was working in watercolor, I found that it took so long to build up a nice, rich, dark, solid color. And I found that with acrylics, I could just bam, it's right there. Um, and if I needed something to be thinner, it used to be that I would water it down, but I have begun using medium more often, transparent medium, acrylic medium to just help thin it down without really, losing so much of the saturation of the color. Let's see here. Now, I definitely cheated on this hand and just sort of like made fist-like shapes like finger-like shapes under this fist. That feels a little bit better, but for the most part, this hand is very much sort of a blobby cheat, as opposed to really properly drawing a hand in there. But a good hand drawing, I think, would take a little bit more time than I want to dive into to fix this drawing. And like I said, what happens if I just get in here and treat this like I'm working traditionally, and whatever mistakes I make, just stay on the page. All right. Gouache. I love how you can reactivate paints from a palette so no bulky tubes to lug around. I even made a tiny dry gouache palette for my wallet so I can even sketch when I only have my wallet. That is a great idea. And Chroma Moma also did a video on the Traveler's Notebook. It's a great system. I'd recommend it if you have time for a rabbit hole. I may have to carve out time for a rabbit hole. Right now, I'm very time poor, but it does sound like it'd be a very useful tool. And I said, yeah, adapting is the name of the game when surviving abuse. And I'm sorry that you have gone through so many abusive interactions in creative communities. That really sucks. And I said, thanks so much for the compliments. I'll absolutely write down the schoolism. Yeah, I hope you do check it out when you feel like it's safe for you, because it is. I mean, I would probably have to think off of my head and look around, but just in terms of like places I've found that I can definitely see as a positive, creative environment, that's definitely one that's at the top. Let's see. So Katie Cat says, I'm absolutely loving this piece, especially the shadows. You're totally right about the silhouette making this piece sing. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to go in here, and as we're getting down to, I'm going to wrap up this live stream when I get caught up on the comments, but I do want to hit this with some color. And I think before I do that, let me make the background kind of a dark gray. In fact, let's do this. Instead, I'll go back to the white background, but I'm going to create a layer with a gradient on it. And I'm going to do that by, let's say, let's fill this layer. Let me just make this gray just slightly bluer. So we'll fill this like that. It's actually needs to be a little bit less saturated. There we go. And then let's take half of this screen and let's fill it with a warmer blue. Let's see. There we go. And now let's deselect. This is the one thing about Procreate that I think really sucks. It doesn't have a gradient tool. And they know that people want gradient tools. People complain about it. I don't know if they're ever going to add it to this. There are other a lot of people swear by Clip Studio Paint, which I know has a gradient tool on it. I also have Infinite Painter on my tablet, but I don't use it. This is one of the things where I'm like, maybe I should, and maybe I should. But anyway, I tend to just take two things and then Gaussian blur the hell out of it. And that is how I tend to make gradients. And I know that you can do gradient maps in Procreate. Let's see here. So let's just lay down a base bright orange color. As a matter of fact, let me turn off that because it'd be really turn off those shadows only because it'd be really easy for me to miss some spots underneath. And I'm going to come back to the comments in a minute, but actually, you know what? I don't do this often enough. I should just draw in a selection. Just do it this way. As opposed to doing all those brush strokes. This is so different from how I usually do it because I am really not. There are some artists who excel at just filling, using the lasso tool, and then just doing gradients and painting tones over it and pulling shadow shapes out of it, and pulling gradients and doing amazing lighting with just basically, like, again, this Procreate doesn't have a gradient tool, but using just the gradient tool and lassos, and they can completely color an illustration with that. And it looks awesome. And it is not a technique that, even aside from Procreate, even if I were working in Photoshop, it just never really mentally clicked for me. But doing this now and seeing how this is just a quicker way for me to block in this silhouette makes me want to give that approach another try. Hang on, let me see. Katie Cat says, yes, that's why I've gravitated towards more traditional, especially for resistance-free sketching. Simple, minimal, no fuss. He said, plus I'm very prone to drawing on the wrong layer. Yeah, I feel you on that. I find digital to be super draining. So I only use it when creating full finished works. I go back and forth. Like, I'm not pro digital, I'm not anti digital. I love doing both. I've been working more digital just because it's easier. It's easier for me in terms of jumping in and working. When I work traditional, it's like I have to have my inks set up so I can, pull those to work from. I have to have a table set out so I'm not going to knock stuff over. When I'm inking, I don't want to do it outdoors. So I'm afraid the wind's going to blow my stuff all over the place. Whereas with digital, all the tools are right there. but I find the tactile nature of traditional work to be far more satisfying. So I look at it like any other tool where it's positive and negatives of the tools, but I don't really feel like one is better or worse than the other. Other than the fact that you also have a physical piece of artwork to sell as opposed to just a print when you work traditionally. That is very much a plus. And I've been working on a bunch of traditional pieces just to sell. I just haven't put them up yet. Katie says, I do the exact same thing now with triggering people. This is in terms of like, blocking them. And Katie says, uh, there we go. It's also very triggering and thrusts me into a maladaptive freeze response. That's my main problem with how much distress this brings me. And I am, again, sorry that you've had so many negative experiences. And they said, I forget how I worded this. Traditional is complicated to get into, but simple to execute. Whereas digital is simple to get into, yet complicated to execute process wise. And I will tell you this, Katie, you are very, very good at writing about your process. Um, Given that you are triggered by a lot of negative online bullying or just impolite remarks, creating your own YouTube channel might not be something you're interested in, but something like just posting your sketches or artwork along with like a blog with just what your thoughts are on the creative process on whatever you're doing or just thoughts on art in general, maybe the written word might be an interesting way for you to share your work. um and I say that with the idea that maybe the best thing is for you to just create your work for you or for whatever your end goals are, or if you want to work in a studio or something. Maybe not sharing it on social media may not be a thing for you, but if you considered it and haven't found a place where you're comfortable doing it, I can tell by the way that you write about your work and how you do it that either doing a blog or doing one of those videos where you have an AI voice generate based on what you type, and then just doing a video where you're sharing a time lapse, those might be ways in which you could share your work, get your work out there without necessarily having to put yourself in the uncomfortable spot of dealing directly with negative people. And I think you can just turn comments off on channels. So in theory, you could do well, you said you've been on YouTube since the beginning. So I don't know if you have, maybe you have tried having channels in the past. But the idea of just having comments off and just putting out the work for the sake of getting the work out there in the universe. But again, doing things that protect your mental and emotional health, I honestly, I that is paramount to everything. But you're very eloquent in how you talk about your process. And it's unfortunate that you've encountered people that don't appreciate that eloquence. And Katie Cat says you should write Helltar on that piece somewhere. I think that I will. I would just need to find a spot for it, but I'm gonna make a little logo to go with it. That's gonna be the last thing that I do. But I'm really gonna. Normally, my streams are only about an hour long, and we're almost at 2 hours here. So I'm gonna wrap this one up shortly. Um, so I'll probably do the Helltar part separately off of the stream. But I'm gonna go in here. I wanted to start with the fire and then paint kind of browns and subtler tones into the horse and have it kind of go from those colors up into the flames. But let's see here. Um, and James, thank you so much. Says that color works. I am glad that you feel that way. It'll be interesting to see how this comes out because, like I said, I don't do a ton of color pieces here. Um, Katie Cat says, I'm the inverse. I've always wanted to do YouTube vids, yet the majority of my internet PTSD from posting my artworks online. They said I could never do an AI voice, though I'd love to be a VTuber with my normal voice. Well, that's the thing. I just wasn't sure if it was something that you'd be comfortable with, because a lot of people really don't feel comfortable, talking into a microphone. When I first started doing live streaming, what I would do is I would just do time lapse videos where I was recording myself, and then later on I would do sort of an audio narration of what I was thinking and feeling. But I got to the point where I had a bunch of videos stacked up, and I might not be recording the audio for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month later. And by that time, I might be able to remember what I was thinking or feeling when I originally made the drawing or the artwork, but it didn't have the immediacy of when we're sitting here and I'm telling you what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling while I make it. It feels immediate. It literally is like this is the process as I'm experiencing it, with um, minimal editorializing. For the most part, it's just this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, this is how it's coming out. Let's see here. What brush do I want to use? Something that has a nice smear, smudgy feel to it. Or I could just smudge. This thing, I'm so used to working in kind of an ink or figure drawing type work that I've never really found a nice painting brush beyond just a smooth brush. So let me see. Let me switch to something that is much more of a red, but a brownish red. Let's see what happens if I just come in here and let me drop the opacity a bit so I can build up the horse color. You know what? Let's go to 100%. But what was I saying? You said I hate social media. That's spot on. I think I'd hire people to edit and moderate comments. The few comments I've gotten through my career have been amazing, so I'd keep them on, but heavily moderated. Well, that's smart. And I said, thanks so much for the fabulous stream. I greatly appreciate your positivity and attention. I appreciate your positivity and appreciation. Well, I mean, I appreciate, this is the reason why I do these streams, is to interact with interesting people and talk about art and process. So I appreciate you so much. And they said, I've got an idea of VTubing for someone who used AI voice due to their autism, making talking draining. Oh, don't need to feel bad. They said, sorry to drag out the stream. This combo is so good, though. No, this is people. I'll tell you. Usually, I get to the end and I just get to an hour and cut it. But I definitely, when we're having interesting conversations. When I say we, I mean the whole community, because everyone on here will chime. Sometimes we have times where we get really lively debates and back and forth. And like I said, we keep it respectful here and upbeat and pleasant. But we go all over the place in terms of these conversations. So there are definitely times, and this is one of them, where we're having an interesting conversation and we just go with it. But anyway, let me, like I said, I'm gonna just wrap up the color on this guy off camera because we have gone long. I need to take a break, spend some family time with my wife and the cats. But let me go back to the large screen here and tell you guys, I never say it enough. If you guys like these videos, hit the like button. If you are not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button so that you guys can catch me on the next one. And if you like extra long live streams, kind of like this one, this is what we do on on Patreon, we do artist office hours where if you're a Patreon subscriber, it's as little as $2 a month. You hop on over there, and in addition to all of the Patreon exclusive posts that we do there, we do a twice monthly live stream where you can post artwork in our Patreon Discord server, our Patreon exclusive server. And if you want me to do a draw over on there or talk process or give you feedback, we can do that live during the stream. I also do an ongoing things called Art Book Study Group. And I usually will have an art book that I'm working from, and I show you how my process for getting better, which is just sitting down, doing studies from educational material. I've been doing a long-running series on Walt Reed's The Figure. We're kind of like down to like the last 20 pages of that book. So we've just been going through it page by page, doing studies from it, learning, going in, doing deep dives. We have another session tomorrow night, Monday, normally at 7:30 p.m., but we're going to do 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time just because I've got a couple of things. I want to give myself a little bit more breathing space tomorrow. So we do them in the evenings. And if you're not a member, now's a good time to sign up. And if you can't make tomorrow's artist office hours session, then you can always catch the replay. And there are replays of the last, few years since I've been on Patreon of those. So there's hundreds of hours of conversation, feedback, art process, and educational research that we've been sharing on there. So head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI and sign up. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated gifts delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. I am the artist, writer, penciler, inker, gray toner. I do everything but run it right through the printing press. You can pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It is a retelling of Lucifer's Fall from Heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both have extensive back matter, character designs, thumbnails, page layouts, photo reference, and more. I basically show you how I put the entire book together. And if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel, scroll down to flip throughs, you can find book flip throughs of all of those books. You can see what's inside before picking it up. And as I have these on the screen, I'm realizing I really need to figure out my camera and lighting setup and take this to the next level, because the covers are so washed out when I have all of these lights on. And you'll see now it's too dark, but yeah, it's a matter of there's a lot of detail in both of the covers, but I'm still trying to figure out how to get this setting so that it really, enough light so that I'm clear, but not so much that's washed out. I really think it's just a matter that my camera is just my normal laptop camera. I don't have a really good live streaming camera. So maybe that's something to look forward to in the future. But anyway, let's see here. Hang on. Again, this thing is doing there we go. Yeah, James says long stream today. Yeah, we got carried away, but the part of that is great conversations with you guys and Katie Cat. Again, thank you for all the interesting conversation and feedback and comments and questions. It says it's about the respect. Bye-bye. Take care. Thanks so much again. You're doing the Lord's work. I try here. All right, guys. Thank you again so much. That's it for now. Go be creative.